So my being a proud Jew and a Zionist have been there since I knew how to walk and talk, thanks to my parents. I used to march in BLM marches. I used to march for marriage equality. Those were my fights. I thought we were okay when it came to being Jews. October 8th really taught me that, oh no, we are far from it. And now we're about to experience potentially, and I genuinely feel that way and still do, that we can experience another Holocaust based on how things have been looking around the world. But in terms of being a Jew, now I feel like that's what we have to be fighting for now. I think that for me, I'm proud to be a lesbian, but I feel safe as a lesbian. I don't feel safe as a Jew.
October 7th, I will never forget that day for as long as I live. So I had a bit of a cushion to fall back on. I just felt like, okay, this is it. This is happening right now. And I'm going to make sure that the people, I have to curate who I allow into my life. I can't be as open as I was before. And just keep speaking up and keep fighting against this tide of anti-Semitism. I don't think it's going away. We all need to buckle up because I don't think this is not anytime soon.
Welcome back to Jew and Stew, the official podcast of the American Jewish Alliance. As Pride Month comes to a close, we're dedicating today's episode to a conversation that is both timely and deeply personal. What does it mean to be proudly Jewish and proudly LGBT? At a time when those identities have for many people become increasingly difficult to navigate. We're joined by two outstanding advocates. Tanya Tsikanovsky, known to many as Highly Jewish, is a nationally recognized Jewish activist, speaker, and digital creator focused on combating anti-Semitism. She serves on the advisory board of the Combat Anti-Semitism movement and is a candidate for West Hollywood City Council. We're also joined by Matthew Nouriel, a British-born Iranian Jewish advocate, writer, and community leader at Jemina. Matthew's work has elevated the conversation around Mizrahi Jewish history, LGBT inclusion, Israeli advocacy, and the incredible diversity of the Jewish people through writing, public speaking, and creative storytelling. Today, we're talking about identity, belonging, pride, Israel, anti-Semitism, resilience, and what it means to build a Jewish community where everyone has a place. Hi, welcome to Jew and Stew. Thank you so much for joining us, Tanya and Matthew. How are you guys doing today?
We're good. We're good. Thank you so much for having us. So grateful to be here.
Doing good. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, of course. So today's episode's kind of special. We're calling it our Pride episode. We're so excited to talk about our stories. I feel like all four of us kind of have very similar stories to share, and it'll be an interesting conversation. So where I'd like to start is with you, Tanya. You came out at the age of 14 and started a gay-straight alliance. What gave you that courage?
Yeah, I would say that my strength came from my need for community. I created a group that I very much needed to feel like I had someplace safe to go. Being on a campus at a time where there was no visibly out students, but we did have visibly out teachers. And knowing that there was a pathway to being open and honest and living your truth, and seeing that in, you know, the teachers that were so well respected, it made me feel like, no, there is a safety here. And I wanted to be able to give that same feeling, and not just to myself, but to the community around me. And so we used to have these assemblies, all school assemblies every week. And I stood up in front of everyone and I said that I was a lesbian. And I think that also just came from a place of desperation of, you know what, if they're not going to accept me as me, then at least I need to be able to accept myself, and speaking my truth is in that. And so I think everything came from a need to feel okay and whole on my own. And I think so much of being a Jew involves how you can, do tikkun olam. And I think that was a big part of it. That, my safety is very much contingent upon the safety of others. And so, and then I started the Gay Straight Alliance with the help of a teacher, and we have been around, it's been there for 25 years now, and I'm very, very proud of it. Absolutely.
So, Tanya, I want to thank you for doing what you've done, because I'm the parent of, I don't know, like every flavor of gay kid that there could be. I'm the parent of those kids. I'm also Orthodox. So I'm a practicing Orthodox Jew. And so to know that there are those safe spaces for the kids, because that's so important really, really like the most important things to know that there are those safe spaces for the kids. And my my kids have found those safe spaces within their schools. One especially in their high school had this tremendously inclusive, and it was a Jewish high school, tremendously inclusive community where you were accepted no matter who you are or what you were. And so for you to start that 25 years ago really set the path for the kids now to have those safe spaces. So I just want to thank you for being that trailblazer so that my kids could have those safe spaces. So thank
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you for being a parent that cares about creating safe spaces for their kids. It's, it starts for that, so thank you.
And prior to just go back to that, my original question, prior to um, October 7th, during that time, did you ever feel like being Jewish and being gay were two different worlds?
No, I very much thought they were one in the same world. First of all, just I've been to Israel and I went to Gay Pride Parade in Israel in 2010. I was 22 at the time. It was the most beautiful pride parade because it actually shut down the entire city. Every other pride parade that I've been to had, specific places and that were marked off, and this the whole city was participating. And I also see that so many gay people have always been at the forefront of social justice movements, as were Jews. So they've always been aligned. And also, when we think about marriage equality, a Jewish couple, lesbian couple brought that to the Supreme Court. When I think about gay mayors that I looked up to, Harvey Milk, I mean, these were all Jews also. So I feel like there's a lot of connection. And for a long time, I just didn't feel like we had to fight for Jewish rights because I thought we had already won that. And then we were going through a time of having to fight for gay rights because we hadn't yet won it. And now I don't know what's going on, truly. But
Yes, and then I'd like to move on to Matthew because I'm sure as an Iranian Jew growing up in London, your experience probably was a little bit different than even mine or Tanya's.
Different and well, yeah, it was different. I don't know if it was because I was in London or I I mean, I went to an Ashkenazi Orthodox day school growing up in London. So my experience was very much formed as being one of very few um, Mizrahi kids in a very predominantly Ashkenazi environment, one of very few secular kids in a religious environment, and a kid who was very obviously gay from a very young age. So my experience was definitely not an easy one, and it's actually caused me to spend a lot of years kind of rejecting my Jewish identity. And it wasn't until way into adulthood that I realized that, after I spent all of this time coming to terms with my um, sexual orientation and, exploring gender identity and exploring all of these things and becoming really comfortable with them, I realized that there's this part of me that isn't going to go away, just like my sexual orientation isn't going to go away, and that was my Jewish identity. And I realized that I couldn't ignore it. So I had to figure out a way to make both work because I came from a world that was very traditional and very binary in every sense of the word. Um, so I found myself kind of compartmentalizing who I was. So if I was in a gay environment, that's all I was. And if I was in a Jewish environment, I would play down my gayness. If I was in an Iranian environment, same. Um, and it just got really, really tiring after a life of doing that. And I just had to sit down and tell myself, you know what, if you're gonna be who you are, and you just need to do it all out because you can't. I couldn't compartmentalize myself like that anymore. So I just said, I'm gonna be the who I am as a whole, and that means I'm fully Jewish, I'm fully Iranian, I'm fully gay, and I'm going to embrace all of it at once. And it wasn't until I started to do that that I really found my tribe. Like I really found my people. Because when you're not being yourself, the people that you're attracted to you are attracted to the person that you're pretending to be. And I didn't want to pretend anymore. So that's been very empowering.
It's amazing. And when did you begin to embrace all of them together, instead of feeling like you had to choose?
Um, I mean, the story is about 10 years ago, a friend of mine named Arya Marvazi, he was working at an organization called JQ International, and we just befriended each other. Like he reached out to me on socials or something, and we met for coffee, and he was this really, really cool guy. And then he called me and said, I'm starting a Persian Pride Fellowship. Actually, let me back up. It happened slightly before that. Around that same time, a lady named Mastana Moghadem, who is a social worker who is Iranian and Jewish, she works with LGBT clients. And she said, I'm going to be doing this panel discussion specifically for Iranians, and would you come? And I just had been so removed from the community that I just thought this is what I felt sorry for her. I was like, let me just go to support her because nobody's going to show up to this thing. And of course, I rolled up Persian Standard Time like 20 minutes late. There was literally nowhere to sit. I'm standing in the back going, what have I done? Why the hell did I think it was a good move to retract myself from the community? I could have been a part of this all along. So shortly after that, Arya called me and said he was starting a Persian Pride Fellowship, and I was like, I'm in, absolutely, I'm in. And so through him and through that fellowship, a sense of community built. And you know, I always, to this day, I forget the importance of community. I'm one of these people who's sort of fiercely independent and very much like, I'll do it on my own. And it's a good thing sometimes, but a lot of the times it can actually be a fault. So leaning into that community really helped empower me. When you build a community of like-minded people, you become empowered. A lot of the people were Jewish as well as Iranian, so that helped too. And it was through that strength that I got the courage to kind of start speaking up publicly, 10 toes down, chest up. I'm Iranian, I'm Jewish, and I'm gay. And this is who I am, whether you like it or not. And if you're on board, great. If you're not, bye. And that's how I started to connect with people who felt the same way.
Great. Edie, I'll pass it off to you.
So, Matthew, I think that when we live authentically, it just frees us up to all the possibilities in life. And I'm so glad that you got past all the stuff so that you could live authentically every single part of you. And that just brings me hope in so many different ways. And I wanted to ask you, with your experience in the Orthodox Ashkenazi day school in London, Tanya was talking about how she had that safe space with her teacher, and it helped her, be able to do what she did. And I was wondering if you had any safe space in that situation. I'm so sorry.
It was a different time. I'm a little older than Tanya as well. It was the 80s and the early 90s. And no, I did not have that safe space until there was a safe space when I moved to the States as in high school. I started to find we had something, I forget what it was called, but it was like a private student group that you could meet once a week, like a support group. But I did not have that in the Jewish environment at all, or in the Iranian environment. It just wasn't a thing at the time.
It wasn't a thing. Yeah. Absolutely 100%. And I think that if we look at your experience in the 80s and then Tanya's experience 25 years ago and where we are now, there is a lot of hope that things have gotten better and that they are these safe spaces. And, as kids are coming up now, they're not going to be experiencing what you did to the extent that you did. So I'm sorry that you didn't have that safe space, but it just shows us how far we've come. So
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah, going back to what oh, go ahead.
no, it's night and day from what it was. I mean, there's always room for improvement and there's always something going on in the world. I think as LGBT people, there's always going to be people that are against us. But we definitely have spaces now where we can go that we didn't have then. Like I look back at that Orthodox school, and there I can never imagine going to a teacher or to a counselor or anybody and saying I I think I'm gay. Like somebody just beat me up, or I just got punched, like all that stuff. Like they would. I didn't even need to go to anybody. I mean, it was like people could see me getting bullied or hit or whatever. And there was really nothing being done about it because I don't think they had the tools, or maybe they didn't want to know. I don't know. So it's night and day.
I do think that while there has been so much done, there is truly so much room for continued growth in this situation, because there are still major problems in being like Mikarev, keeping the gay Jewish community close to the Jewish part of being a Jew, and within the Orthodox and the Jewish school system, it's not there yet. And so while there's so much wonderful things that have been happening, there's still tremendous room for growth in that, so that we do keep the kids close, and so that these kids understand that they can be authentically gay and Jewish at the same time.
Listen, I think this is a really important point, because I think a lot of us are baffled, for example, when we see Jewish kids joining the Queers for Palestine movement. And I firmly believe that a big part of that is that they felt rejected by their Judaism, whether they realize it on a conscious level or not. I'm saying this because I know what that feels like, right? I went through it. And thank God I came out the other side. But I feel like there's a lot of people who, whether it be because of their sexuality or their gender identity or whatever it is, they felt rejected by the Jewish world enough to turn around and now say, I'm part of this anti-Semitic movement, and hiding behind the term anti-Zionism. So I think it's really, really important for us to embrace our young people for who they are, if we don't want them leaving, essentially.
Actually, I love that you said that, and this conversation has made me think about something I don't think I've ever even realized, is that I had the experience of being exposed to Reform Judaism in the schools that I was a part of, in the communities. They were all very Reform, and in the Reform movement, that's where you saw gay temples or gay rabbis, and so I've actually always felt that being a Jew made it okay for me to be gay, because there were so many options of Judaism, right? It's like, and I kind of always felt, and I kind of love being able to now be exposed to so many Orthodox gay people, because to me, I was always like, nope, I just can't be Orthodox because I'm gay and they don't agree with my lifestyle. So, but the good thing is, there are still a bunch of other variations of how we practice Judaism, and I can be accepted in that. And so I kind of looked at it from that perspective, where I wasn't trying to find a place for me in Orthodoxy because I didn't think there was a place there. And so, but there was a clear place for me in Reform. And so I just went into that. I do think that perhaps if I had exposure to, more like a conservative or an Orthodox space that was also inclusive, maybe I would have been more religious. And that's also something to have to unpack, because perhaps my relationship with Judaism is very much based on where I was or was not accepted within it.
But with that said, I do want, and I think you'll agree with me, Tanya, and maybe it's because we're in LA, it's like a different game here, but I'm still surprised to this day by who is accepting of me, like people that I would think wouldn't be. And the perfect example was about a year and a half or 2 years ago. I was at this event, and it was the first time I'd seen or noticed the guys from Magen which is a security service, nonprofit organization, Jewish. They teach Jewish people how to shoot, and they provide security services, a lot of time free of charge at different Jewish events. And I'm at this event, and I'm like, they were all religious guys, like they were all Orthodox Jewish men. And come to find out, the guy who runs the organization is a rabbi, modern Orthodox. And I was just like, I just remember feeling somewhat uncomfortable about it because of my own bullshit and because of my own preconceived notions that I had and my experiences that I had way back when I was a kid, right? And something happened at this one event where one of them came up to me and said, "Thank you so much for the work you do. The guys want to take a picture with you." And I was completely floored. And it made me actually really emotional because here we are. There was like 10 of them, and Rabbi Yossi, who runs he was right there. And we take this group shot, and it made me realize that maybe it's a post October 7th thing. I don't know, but it just opened up my eyes to the fact that not everybody who's Orthodox is going to be anti-gay, and that is not the right way to look at it. Because you really, really have to judge people as individuals. And also, I think it's really important to, instead of denouncing your Jewishness, like going in full force. I mean, this was one of the benefits. They saw who I was. They saw I was defending my Judaism and my Jewish people and our Jewish country with all of my might, and they respected that. So I don't know what my point is. I guess it's just that you can never judge a book by its cover.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I share a story with you guys? My 20-year-old fell, broke the left foot and the right ankle in two places, right? But they fell and they were screaming on the sidewalk, and a lady stopped and said to him, "You mean to call an ambulance?" And my kid goes, "No, call Hatzalah." So we have Hatzalah, the Jewish ambulance service here in Chicago. And the lady's like, "Okay, I've heard of it. I have to look it up because I don't know how to spell it." She called Hatzalah. I show up and Hatzalah is there, and they referred to my child as she because they were assigned female at birth, and I said no, it's he. So this is an Orthodox run ambulance service, right? And automatically it's he. Everyone that came in for Hatzalah, the one would say to the next, "It's he, it's he, he's a he, he's a he, he's a he." And it was the most respectful, inclusive thing I've seen in the Orthodox community in terms of just seeing a Jew for a Jew and respecting that. And I was trying not to cry because it was so probably validating for my kid. It was validating for me as a parent, but so validating for my kid to say, even though some people in my family don't understand this, these people have no problem with referring to me as who I am. And it was just like the most amazing thing. So I just wanted to share that with you guys because it's hard, but there are sparks of light and joy, in this hard world that we live in.
I love that, Edie.
I'm sure that was very meaningful to you, or someone who comes from an Orthodox background.
Yeah, it was very heartwarming for me. And like then we went to the emergency room and they're referring to my kid as she, and the Hatzalah guys are like, "No, it's he."
Amazing.
So, yeah.
I have to. Today's about both of you guys, but I do just want to say, Edie has been so amazing to like me and my husband as well. I relate very much to Tanya. I grew up in a liberal Christian household. We were taught to be pro-Israel, and then coming out as gay, it was very accepting. I had teachers who were very accepting and able to help guide me through some of the struggles that I was going through with students not being as accepting. So I just had a lot of support growing up. And it wasn't until I met my husband that I realized the struggle especially in the Orthodox Jewish community, that, his parents actually had said Kaddish and said, I forget the term. What's the term where you sit after a funeral?
Shiva.
Shiva.
Thank you. Set Shiva for him. Basically had a funeral for him after he came out, and he's always kept his Orthodox identity, but has always prayed on his own. And just meeting Edie and our amazing team at the American and Chicago Jewish Alliance, he's really been able to re-find a community. So knowing that there are those spaces out there, and there are people in the Orthodox community who aren't going to vilify him, and especially after October 7th, I see so many of us, even the Orthodox community, coming together and saying we can't divide. It doesn't matter if you're gray, white, or blue, LGBT, straight. We all have to come together. So I just kind of want to thank Edie there in that moment for kind of being there as a support for us. Since we have brought up Queers for Palestine and October 7th, I do kind of want to transition into that. I want to hear from both of you about how did October 7th change your activism? How did it change your relationship to LGBTQ spaces? And what was the moment that you realized things were different?
Um, yeah, I guess I'll go. It was very October 8th. Yeah, I mean, it's and I don't wanna say I'm an October 8th Jew because I've been highly Jewish online for over a decade, so none of this is new, right? So my being a proud Jew and a Zionist have been there since I knew how to walk and talk, thanks to my parents who taught me that, as immigrants from the USSR, that's been in my blood. So I but in terms of having to dedicate my life, my activism from a space of like I used to march in BLM marches. I used to march for marriage equality. Those were my fights. I thought we were okay when it came to being Jews. October 8th really taught me that, oh no, we are far from it. And now we're about to experience potentially, and I genuinely feel that way and still do, that we can experience another Holocaust based on how things have been looking around the world. And so um, what I think was easy was copy pasting the same attitude and the same way of living my life as a gay woman now into my identity as a Jew. I used to, for lack of better terms, shove my gayness into everyone's face because I felt like it was such a taboo and I wanted people to get comfortable. Then I believe people got comfortable and I believe that we won. And I think that now we're overdoing it and there's no need to be fighting the way that we're fighting. But in terms of being a Jew, now I feel like that's what we have to be fighting for now. I think that for me, I'm proud to be a lesbian, but I feel safe as a lesbian. I don't feel safe as a Jew. And that is now the fight that I feel like I need to have because of that. And specifically in gay spaces, I have felt personally discriminated against more for being Jewish within a gay space than I have in any space in my entire life. And I have had experiences with anti-Semitism. I think I've made it seem like my life has been rosy and peachy. It has far not been. But I'd say I think comparatively to others, I feel blessed. But I remember being called a kike when I was 10, and I remember having someone say Heil Hitler, to me. So, but those all felt like they were crazy offshoots or random people. It didn't feel like a whole community was feeling that way. And that is how it feels like in the gay community now to be called a Nazi and be called a genocide baby killer all because I'm wearing this is mind boggling to me. And just the whole Queers for Palestine movement is mind boggling to me. And yeah, it's just awful. It's predicated on all the things that we apparently stand against. So it's hard.
Um, so for me, October 7th, I will never forget that day for as long as I live. But as far as the effect with my LGBT identity or with the community, I, in a sense, remember how I said I built community a few years prior amongst Iranian Jews and LGBT people who were like-minded with similar experiences. So I had a bit of a cushion to fall back on. So for me, didn't hit me quite as hard because the people that I'd surrounded myself with were like-minded for the most part. That's not to say that I didn't experience anything anti-Semitic, or especially Tanya can attest to this too. I mean, we have on presence on social media. When you have you've created, you've exposed yourself to a lot of attacks. But I just felt like, okay, this is it. This is happening right now. And I'm going to make sure that I have to curate who I allow into my life. And I can't be as open as I was before. And just keep speaking up and keep fighting against this tide of anti-Semitism, which I'm sorry to be Debbie Downer, I don't think it's going away. So we we all need to buckle up because I don't think this is, not anytime soon.
Agreed, unfortunately.
Yeah. And it's really unfortunate that so many at the forefront of such a vocal group of people from the LGBT community are participating in it. But I do also want to name that there are so many people who are LGBT who are not participating in this Queers for Palestine movement, who I think are maybe from a slightly older generation or who just have a good head on their shoulders or whatever. And I do think it's mostly people from an older generation, to be honest with you, who I will inevitably get DMs from followers or comments or whatever, and they thanking me, saying that these kids have no idea what they're talking about. And I think that it really, ironically, this generation of kids that can't shut up about privilege are actually flaunting the ultimate in privilege to be able to be a Westerner who has never lived under any kind of oppression in your life as a member of the LGBT community, who is privileged enough to grow up in a time when Gen Z, especially in major cities in the States, have never had to deal with real homophobia the way that Tanya or I have. For you to be able to stand up and fight alongside a movement that wants you dead more than it wants Jews dead, when people from who have to survive under those regimes, such as Hamas or such as the Islamic regime in Iran, will do anything to be able to have the privilege that you have, and you're fighting for their oppressors because it's trendy or it's cool or because you're brain dead. I don't know what the reasons are. To me, that is the ultimate in irony, and there's no pride in that. That to me is an absolute shame. If I could be like in Game of Thrones, that nun with the bell, like following them and go, shame, shame, shame. It is shame. There's no pride in that. And there is I mean, to hear people like Matt XIV say things like, well, I don't feel the need to speak up about LGBT people in the Middle East because it's a different culture. I mean, can you say racism of low expectations? It's the most vile thing in the world. So,
No, he's awful. I think it's also I do agree with you completely that it seems to be older generation that seems to at least the elder gays see it, but that's also problematic because the younger ones are like, "Oh, you guys are just old. You're not in with the times. You're not, like unfortunately, like we all look at our parents and think, "Oh, you're old." And it's now we're experiencing it on that end. And now thankfully, like, Matthew, you look so young. So hopefully you can continue the next 100 years of, confusing everyone
are
and
you calling me one of the elders?
there. So we're gonna go back a few years soon because this is just like, what is this? So hopefully it'll look like we're younger and continue to inspire them. But we need more than anything really visibly proud gay Zionists that are 20 and 18 and 16. We need more of you and me when we were younger now. And I think that we need to put in as much effort as we can to be visible in spaces where younger people are. Like, I am so not into going to bars, but I think I need to start because people need to see this as as much as possible. Like, that's visibility, unfortunately, is what works. Like, I remember, and again, I know this isn't political at all, but the Log Cabin's a Republican gay group, and I remember being in a group with them, and one of them said, he asked in front of everyone. He was like, "I guys, like, how do I tell my neighbor I'm a Republican? They're gonna kill me." And I sat there and I raised my hand. I'm like, and he was older, like, definitely older. And I was like, you were asking that exact same question about a straight neighbor 40 years ago, how they're going to handle you coming out as gay. And so I think that, like, the greatest gift that my being gay has taught me is that if we just live who we are, if we are visibly who we are, that goes such a long way. If we're honest about who we are, it gives someone permission to be able to do that too. And so I'm hopeful that with more visibility, we can create that safety. That was the whole reason why I started the GSA, so that people felt like they had somewhere to go, right? So it's the same with, I think, reaching the younger crowd, is sort of trying to meet them where they are, and bringing that visibility. And I hope that that helps, because I don't know what else we can do, honestly.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned coming out as a Republican, and I I understand that you are running for public office in West Hollywood, and that you have changed parties.
I did, yeah.
So I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit, because I feel like I have no political voice as a Jew
My girl.
in this country. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, because I would love to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was the quintessential Jewish woman. And what I mean by that was that I have always been in social justice. I was a Democrat up and down the ticket since it was 18 years old. I even moved to Iowa and worked for Hillary Clinton's campaign against Trump, and used to write sentences that said that I would be leaving the country if he became president. So I have worn all of those hats proudly for a very long time. And then October 7th happened, and then October 8th happened, and then I watched kids on campuses get blocked from classes, and our administration did nothing. And we just continued to double down in Congress that we need to block arms sales to Israel, and we need to not go into Rafah, even though we had American Jewish hostages in Rafah. And then we had a new person, Kamala, who said that she wouldn't do anything different than the administration did before. And I'm just seeing our hostages are still, enslaved. And I see that our kids are not getting into class, which is what happened in 1930s and 20s in Nazi Germany. And it just made me realize that before I am anything, I am a Jew, and I need to protect my Jewish people and my Jewish identity. And I felt that under a new administration and a different party, I would feel that. And I still feel that. And it's unfortunate because I I recognize that the Republicans have anti-Semites, and I think that there's a lot of them, but I genuinely believe the Democratic Party is anti-Semitic. And that is the difference for me. And I would say that any other issue under the sun. I'm pro marriage equality. Obviously, I've been married and divorced, and I plan to get married again. I am very much pro choice. That is a through line for me that doesn't change. But that also works when it comes to vaccines. I have through lines with everything, right? You have the choice to live how you want to live. So I am aligned with the party that I felt is going to protect Jews most, and that's the Republican Party. And I am very proud of that choice. I feel relieved that we have Trump as president. When it comes to Israel, I'm a little bit concerned with Iran, or I should say a lot of bit concerned with Iran. I'm hoping this is just a game to get through midterms, and then we're going to destroy them. I hope. But I certainly feel we're still better off than we would have been had we had Kamala. And the reason why I've picked a team is because I knew that I'd want to be in politics, and you have to pick a team. I don't think independents have anywhere near the same abilities to vote in different races and to actually have a say in Congress the same way. And that is ultimately where I want to be. So, on a personal note, that's why I chose. And also, if so many of us from the blue side that are moderates go to the red side, that red side's going to be a lot more purple. And I think that's gonna be a lot more representative of our nation as a whole. I think there's a lot more opportunity, and even like, Matthew had said, that side was so welcoming to me over just common sense issues, and they welcome me and my girlfriend and ask me when we're getting married, and they're not using different vernacular. They're like, "Oh, that's your girlfriend? Are you guys engaged? Is she your fiance?" I genuinely have lived the experience where we have moved past, homophobia being a predominant part of the Republican Party. And I think that ultimately the fabric of that party very much is be proud to be an American and live your life. That's how it feels. Again, that's not everyone, but that's how it feels. And when I see what's happening with the Democrats, with Scott Wiener and how they're getting yelling at him, and what's happening with Plattner and all the DSA members that Mamdani endorsed that all won. I mean, these initiatives unfortunately don't have a space for Jews. And that's the I just made a choice purely based on that.
For me, it's just a really scary political place to live here right now. And, I feel like I don't have a home, but you've given me a lot to think about and some really good perspective. So I really want to thank you, because, it's to figure out where you belong in any sense of the word right now, I think is hard. So thank you very much for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so Tanya, you brought up actually, Iran and maybe some of the things that we don't love about how Trump handled that situation, or up to this point, how he's handled it. So I would love to actually jump to Matthew and speaking about, why it's important that people understand what's happening with Mizrahi and especially Iranian Jews right now, and what you can share with our audience to maybe help them understand what's going on.
With Iran?
Yes.
Sure. So, sorry, do you mind if I ask you some clarifying questions? Like, are you asking about Iranian Jews inside Iran specifically, or what's going on with the broader war?
I think we can start with what's going on with Iranian Jews inside of Iran, and then we can move on to that other side about the broader topic there.
So, what people don't seem to know or understand, through no fault of their own, really, is that uh, people point to the fact that there is still a Jewish population inside Iran, albeit it's only 10% of what it was. In 1979, it was about 80 to 100,000 Jewish people, and today there's maybe 10,000 at most. Most people say around 8,500. So it's literally 10% of what it once was. A lot of propagandists will use this fact and say it's the largest population of Jews in the Middle East outside of Israel, omitting the fact that there's a reason why it's the largest number of Jews, that it's only 10,000 people. And it's just a testament to how thoroughly Jews had been cleansed of the rest of the Middle East. There are no Jews left. There's maybe 2 or 3 in various countries. Libya has 0, for example. So this population lives by, they've always been used as pawns by the regime. The regime did not want its Jewish population to leave. Most had to flee. The reason they didn't want them to leave is because they can use them as a propaganda tool, which they do very much to this day. So when somebody like, what's his name? From I think it's called Greystone or Gray Zone Productions, Max Blumenthal can go in and do an hour-long documentary about the Jews of Iran inside Iran, and he has community leaders and rabbis and the one member of parliament. By the way, there's only allowed to be one Jewish member of parliament in Iran, speaking about how anti-Israel they are and how pro-regime they are and how amazing Iran is. And then he can blast that on his YouTube for millions of people to watch, who then their takeaway is, wow, it's such a tolerant society, and it's such a tolerant, the regime is so tolerant. What they don't realize is that the regime controls everything. So you cannot go into Iran. Even all of these influencers, like food bloggers and stuff that are inside Iran, they have to get permission from the Ministry of Islamic Guidance and Affairs. And nobody mentions that. When CNN is covering stuff from inside Iran, or BBC, they're not letting everybody know, which I think legally they should have to let people know. We are being watched, we are being chaperoned, and we are working under the guidance of the Ministry of Islamic Affairs and Guidance. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to, right? So when Max Blumenthal is interviewing members of the Jewish community inside Iran, those members of the Jewish community may as well have had a gun to their head. So it's not as if they can speak freely. It's not as if they can say whatever they want. They can't. When you see Jews at a Al-Quds Day, a couple of years ago, it fell on Passover, and they were instructed, the community leaders were instructed not to go to synagogue, but instead to come and march on Al-Quds Day. Why is that? They need to use them as a propaganda tool. Look, our Jews are living perfectly and happily, and they're anti-Israel. There's a difference between the Israel, Zionists and Jews, and so on and so forth. And we are the perfect example of that. So I really, really wish people would understand that, um, and be a lot more clear on that. And I think that us as a broader Jewish community have done a bit of a disservice in our day schools and in our academic systems by not including these stories, or by not teaching Mizrahi and Sephardic history and heritage alongside our Ashkenazi brethren, because you don't get a complete picture of who the Jewish people are, first of all. And second of all, I really believe that, like, for a lot of secular, Americanized, for lack of a better term, white functioning Jewish kids in America after October 7th have, and even before October 7th, had no idea how to respond to their professors when their professors are espousing the bullshit lies that Jews are from Europe and that we are European colonialist usurpers in our own indigenous land. And they're standing there going, well, yeah, I guess my grandparents, my great-grandparents did come from Europe, and they don't know. They don't know their own history. And I say their own specifically. My history is your history, and your history is my history. Ethiopian Jewish history is just as much ours as ours is theirs. As Jewish people, if we want to say that we are one people, Am Israel, we really, really need to know all of our histories, because they belong to all of us. So I think that it's something I will die on that hill. It is so important. And also, because of October 7th, families like mine recognize the language that was being used by Hamas and by all those Gazans who were pouring into the kibbutz. Families from Middle Eastern Jewish backgrounds understood that language very clearly. Their ancestors had seen it before. We know exactly what it is. And I think a lot more people should know exactly what it is. And how would they have known? Through education. And to add to that, I think that there's this fear of, when you speak about these things, when you speak to people like Joseph Samuels, who's now in his 90s and survived the Farhud, and there's no way to speak about these issues without speaking specifically about Islamic anti-Semitism. And when you name it, people get scared that it's Islamophobic. We cannot be scared to name it. I'll leave it at that.
Great, thank you. Edie, I want to give you the opportunity to ask maybe one more question before we move into our final and our closing.
I live my life like reaching for hope whenever I can find hope, and looking for hope in all the places that I live. And I'm wondering right now, what gives you hope? Where do you find hope? And how do you bring hope into your lives?
Here, and conversations with you, and hearing what you had to say about how you parent and how you relate to Judaism, and hearing Ethan's story, who isn't even Jewish, and his relationship with his husband, who is Orthodox, and Matthew continuing to fight and finding homes and in spaces where he at first felt rejected. I mean, I think that that shows us that we are living our hope, right? And so I think that, I remember, a friend of mine, Zach Sage Fox, he always says that for as bad as it is to be a Jew now, it's still better than any other time in the world. And it is. We have Israel, we have each other, we have this space that we get to, have. And I think that, obviously, like, people that are in, Iran don't have any of these things. And I think that that perspective gives me hope in that, if someone is doing it right, like we are right now, that's what gives me hope. As long as we continue to be on the right side, and do what we think is best, and live who we are. So I think as long as we get to do that, then I will remain hopeful.
Well said. Yeah. There's a lot of things to be hopeful about. There's a lot of things. Listen, there's a lot of things I'm not hopeful about. I'm not hopeful about our place in the U.S. As Jews. I'm very concerned about how the direction things are going, and let me put it that way. But the things that I am hopeful about is, the thing that gives me the most hope is this growing unity between many Iranian people, non-Jewish Iranian people, and the Jewish community, and this kinship and understanding that really gives me a lot of hope. And another thing that gives me a lot of hope is both amongst Iranians and Jewish people is how incredibly smart and astute our young people are. And I think when you come from what we come from, you kind of, or are experiencing what we're experiencing, what Jews are experiencing right now, and what Iranians are experiencing right now, you kind of have to be. And that gives me hope. It sucks that you have to be, but it gives me hope because our kids are so smart. They're so smart.
That's great. I thank you very much, both of you, for answering the question. And I want to point out that, you feel helpless and hopeless about our place in this country, and yet have tremendous hope in other places. And I want to just make sure that, we can have both of those feelings at the same times. We can feel helpless about some things and tremendously hopeful about other things. They don't have to exist separately. They can exist at the same time. So I think that's important to acknowledge.
Absolutely. And that things, sure, listen, everybody's has opinions. They're like assholes, right? Like everybody's got one. And this is just my opinion. Maybe somebody else doesn't agree with me, that's fine.
I think your concerns are very valid, tremendously valid. Yeah.
I think so too. Otherwise I wouldn't have them.
Let's go.
But also I want to name that things can change at the drop of a hat. And we've seen things, the way things go right now, everything is so unexpected all the time, which is part of our anxiety, but it's also, it could work in the other direction as well. So we never know what's going to happen in the next hour, much less the next year.
Right. And I think also with this country, it takes people like Tanya running for local office and starting there and making those changes locally, and then more expansive throughout the country. I think that's where it starts. And so that brings me a lot of hope too. Good luck, Tanya.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much.
I'm going to give this hope.
Oh, you guys are so sweet. Thank you.
All right, guys, before we end, I just want us to take a moment. Let's imagine that there is a teenager like we were at one point watching this, and they are struggling with isolation, whether they are struggling with it because they're LGBT, because they are Jewish, maybe they're both. What's that one thing that you each would like to leave them with?
I I think that pride is individual. And I think that if you can have pride being who you are as an individual, it makes it so much easier to find community and to build community and to have a safe space. In order to have one, you have to be one. And so if you can learn to nurture whatever your needs are as a person individually. And, you know, I, I think one thing I mention is that I had no friends when I was really little. I had a lot, I was made fun of a lot. I was like the tallest girl in the class and I was always, a tomboy and, I was too boyish for the girls and too girlish for the guys. And it was never like there were many instances where I would, like, you could see it where the girls would be here and the boys would be here and I would be in the middle. And I have to say that that is what gave me the strength to uh, be okay being alone. And that I think is the most important thing that we need in order to find anyone else. It's that same thing. You can't love anyone unless you, or no one can love you unless you love yourself. I hate to say it, but I think that's very much true. So if we can be okay being alone, you'll find you'll find like friends way quicker if you need them less. I guess that's with everything. If you're less needy, you'll attract more. I have no idea, but
It's true. I had very similar experience, and it's true. Definitely, I want to mirror that. Like, learn to be comfortable with yourself, and learn to love yourself, and know that whatever it is that you're experiencing will pass. Nothing lasts forever, and feelings don't last forever. I think just keep being authentic, keeping real, and keep searching out love and acceptance. Like, make sure that you're surrounded with people, or that even if it's just one person in your life that you trust and that trusts you and that will always have your back. I think it's really important to surround yourself with good people, um, and just learn to love yourself.
that's beautiful. I agree.
So beautiful. Well, I want to thank you both so much for being a part of Jew and Stew today. It was wonderful having both of you, and the messaging that you brought to today's episode. I think it's going to go a long way in our community. So thank you again.
Thank you guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
As we close today's episode, we want to extend our sincere thanks to Tanya Tsikanovsky and Matthew Nouriel for joining us and sharing their stories, insights, and experiences. At the American Jewish Alliance, we believe strong communities are built through meaningful conversations, even when they're challenging. The Jewish story has always been one of resilience and commitment to standing together, and today's discussion is a reminder that there's room for every Jew at the table. To learn more about the American Jewish Alliance, support our mission, or explore upcoming events and programs, visit JewishAlliance.com. We'll see you on the next episode of Jew and Stew.
Follow the American Jewish Alliance to stay in the loop, and subscribe to this podcast so you can see what's coming next. We are going to have speakers that represent the entire spectrum of the Jewish community, from philosophical thinkers, from soldiers, people on the front lines of advocacy work on universities. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next time.